Hi, right, there's all sorts of trailers coming out, isn't it? As we come out of lockdown. This is a film called The Card Counter, which is directed by Paul Schrader. Now, Paul Schrader, for those of you who don't know, is now a 75-year-old filmmaker who in the last 5 years has essentially gone all the way back to the beginning of filmmaking, guerrilla-style filmmaking. He made a film recently, well, not recently, but he made a low-budget movie with, was it Lindsay Lohan? The Canyons, maybe? I think it might have been The Canyons. I'm just having a look here. Yeah, Lindsay Lohan, The Canyons, which kind of was an attempt to resurrect Lindsay Lohan's career. But he makes, and from that, he's moved on to make, a couple of years ago, he made First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke, for which he was nominated for Best Screenplay, Paul Schrader. Most famously, he was the writer behind and a huge creative force behind Martin Scorsese's films Raging Bull and Taxi Driver, and I think The Last Temptation of Christ as well. And he's a supremely troubled man who's fascinated with the masculine experience of certain types of men who've gone through trauma, who've gone through sort of moral doubt. I mean, think of Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, you know, solitary men on their own sort of like almost moral mission or moral descent or moral downfall, and how they find themselves or sustain themselves, or how they sort of, in a sense, careen out of control. Check out First Reformed. It builds to this most astonishing final scene. Ethan Hawke is absolutely mesmeric in it, and it's a shortish film. So he's a really interesting filmmaker, and at 75, so going back to 2013 when he made The Canyons, that's the last 7 years, he sort of reputationally and for whatever reasons, he kind of faded away, didn't work with Scorsese. I think Scorsese has actually produced this new film, and then he resurrected his career 7 years ago. So he was 68, low budget filmmaking, scrimped and saved a bit of money to make that, and he's clawed his way back up. And he's talked in an interview about the fact that for him, almost his journey is a parallel of most of the men he's written films about. So this is The Card Counter, and it stars Oscar Isaac. It stars Tiffany Haddish as well, who's a great actress. She was in the comedy film Girls Trip. She's been a host on Saturday Night Live. She also acted in the movie Night School with Kevin Hart, and she was very good in that. And her story, I think, is a real rags to riches sort of story too. So this stars, as I say, Oscar Isaac, Tiffany Haddish, Tye Sheridan, and Willem Dafoe. Now, Willem Dafoe takes on some of the most bizarre parts known to man. You might have seen him in The Lighthouse. Obviously, he worked with Schrader and Scorsese on The Last Temptation of Christ. He played Christ. He did that film with Lars von Trier, a very sexual film. Can't remember what it's called. And of course, he did The Florida Project, which was brilliant. I think he was nominated for an Oscar for that too. So it's a great cast. It's a small cast, and essentially the story or the premise is very short. The Card Counter tells the story of an ex-military interrogator, think about that, turned gambler, haunted by the ghosts of his past decisions. So classic Paul Schrader territory, a man who's done a really tough job that probably involved all sorts of kind of torturous things, who's haunted by his behaviour, and we're probably going to see how it plays out in his life today. So should we check it out? It sounds intriguing. Personally, I'm excited about this. You might not be, but I am.
There is a weight a man can accrue.
This is where all the good stuff happens.
Oh, there's
A weight
Willem.
created by his past actions. It is a weight which can never be removed.
That's weird. Martin Scorsese presents.
All in.
You count cards, right?
I'm not that smart.
But you win. You need someone to stake you.
That's what you do. You run a stable.
I'm always looking for a good thoroughbred.
Having been sentenced to 10 years in prison,
I learned to count cards.
how'd you do that?
Poker's all about waiting.
Check, raise, re-raise, call.
Then something happens.
You remember it?
This is where all the good stuff happens.
They made you the fall guy.
You need to back off.
You've been around him. He's a mystery. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
This is how it starts. Just a fleeting thought.
You might want a piece of what I'm gonna do.
Then it builds.
So what is that? Set things straight.
It doesn't matter to me if you did something bad in your past.
Nothing can justify what we did. We are each responsible for our own actions.
You know the phrase tilt, just like in pinball. Any man can tilt. You can tilt. Is it possible to know when one reaches the limit?
You have to be the strangest poker player I ever met.
Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
I tell you what, it's really nice to see Oscar Isaac playing a villain again, or a villainous character, or not necessarily a villain, but a character that's flawed and a character that clearly has done bad things. It reminds me of the first time I came across him, which was in that sci-fi AI movie Ex Machina, which is, I have to say, is one of my top films of all time. And since the Star Wars thing of him playing Poe Dameron and all that kind of stuff, you know, the worry is that he's become a bit too clean and a bit too good. So I like the fact that this shows him having a ragged past. Willem Dafoe looks interesting. I liked the black and white footage. That kind of really was intriguing. I have to say, though, in the other footage, he looked like a really old man. I mean, maybe he's meant to be a really old man, but it looks like he was the instigator of bad behaviour in the Oscar Isaac character. I liked the idea of him wrapping everything up with sheets in his room. Is that a consequence of some form of OCD? Or is it rather more menacingly, perhaps, so that blood doesn't get on anything because he's about to do something awful? The gambling thing, I suppose gambling's always a great metaphor, isn't it, for life? And will the cards fall in the right way? Chance versus luck versus skill versus deceit and all that kind of stuff. Redemption, key characteristic of all Paul Schrader movies, or Martin Scorsese movies for that matter. Redemption, will he find redemption? And right down to having these sort of phrases about providence and grace tattooed on his back. I can't say I'm as excited as I was with the film First Reformed. I thought First Reformed was a surprisingly static world about a vicar within which this inner turmoil was happening. And where I think Schrader and Scorsese are at their best is where that inner fury and angst of men, the men in their films, struggles to find an outlet and then bursts out. Maybe that's what this is about, and maybe that's what happens, but I feel the trailer is very much sort of giving us it in the face. This is the outward expression. So anyway, what do you think, guys? Would you go and see that? Are you an Oscar Isaac fan?
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.